611 commandos sailed into hell and changed the war. March 28, 1942. The Loire estuary runs black under searchlights, while German guns track British ships racing toward the most fortified port in Nazi Europe. What happens when an old American destroyer packed with explosives rams straight into the heart of Hitler's Atlantic fortress? How do you destroy a dry dock that keeps the world's most dangerous battleship alive? St. Nazaire sits 5 miles up the Loire River on France's Atlantic coast. Population 50,000. The Germans turned this port into their western stronghold with concrete submarine pens thick enough to stop battleship shells. But one target matters above all others: the Normandy dry dock, 300 meters long, 50 meters wide, 16 meters deep. Built in 1932 for the luxury liner Normandy. Now it's the only dock on Europe's Atlantic coast big enough to service Tirpitz, Germany's ultimate weapon. Tirpitz weighs 56,000 tons, 8 15-inch guns, 30 knot top speed. She's bigger than Bismarck and twice as dangerous because she's still alive. Admiral Karl Dönitz knows that if Tirpitz breaks out into the Atlantic shipping lanes, she'll need somewhere safe to dock for repairs. St. Nazaire is that safe harbor. Destroy the dock and you trap the world's deadliest battleship in Norwegian waters forever. If you value documented World War II history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the National World War II Museum's detailed archives, published in 2021, and the Naval History magazine's comprehensive documentation from 2017, backed by the Commando Veterans Archive and the London Gazette's official raid accounts. Now back to the information. Winston Churchill faced his darkest hour in early 1942. U-boats sank 2 ships every day in the North Atlantic. Singapore fell to the Japanese. German submarines prowled American waters, sinking tankers within sight of beach hotels. Britain needed a victory that would shock the world and prove she could still strike back. Combined operations. Chief Lord Louis Mountbatten presented Churchill with Operation Chariot on March 3, 1942. The plan was brilliant and insane. Take HMS Campbelltown, an obsolete American destroyer from 1918. Pack her bow with 4.5 tons of explosives. Disguise her as a German torpedo boat. Ram her into the dry dock gates at 19 knots. Let commandos pour out to destroy every piece of machinery that keeps the dock running. Simple. The German defenses told a different story. 5,000 troops stationed in and around St. Nazaire. Captain Ido Diekmann commanded the 280th Naval Artillery Battalion with 28 guns from 75mm field pieces to massive 280mm railway guns. Captain Karl Conrad Mecke's 22nd Naval Flak Brigade added 43 anti-aircraft guns that could shred wooden boats at close range. Concrete bunkers crowned every strategic position. Searchlights swept the harbor. Machine gun nests covered every approach. Lieutenant Commander Stephen Beatty took command of Campbelltown, while Lieutenant Colonel Augustus Newman led 265 commandos from No. 2 Commando. They practiced on British docks until they could set demolition charges in 10 minutes or less. Each man carried Thompson submachine guns, Bren guns, grenades, and up to 90 pounds of explosives. Newman told them plainly there was little chance they'd be evacuated alive. Not one man backed out. Campbelltown underwent radical surgery at Devonport. Her 4 funnels became 2, angled and shortened to match German Moe-class torpedo boats. Her main guns disappeared. 8 20mm Oerlikon cannons replaced them. Steel armor plated her bridge and deck. Her draft dropped to allow passage over Loire mudflats. Most important, Lieutenant Nigel Tibbets cemented 24 depth charges containing 4,500 pounds of Amitol explosive into steel tanks behind her forward gun mount. 8-hour pencil fuses would trigger the blast long after the crew escaped. 2 destroyers, HMS Atherstone and HMS Tyndale, would escort the raiders across the English Channel. 16 Fairmile motor launches, motor gun boat, 314, and motor torpedo boat, 74, completed the assault force. 611 men sailing into the teeth of Hitler's Atlantic Wall. The flotilla cleared Falmouth Harbor at 1400 hours, March 26, 1942. 400 miles to target through submarine-infested waters. They sailed southwest toward Gibraltar to deceive German reconnaissance, then turned east toward France after dark. U-593 spotted them at 0700 March 27th, but radioed their position as a convoy heading south. The ruse worked. At midnight, March 28th, the escorts dropped away. Campbelltown led 3 motor launches into the Loire, flying Nazi battle flags and transmitting German codes captured during the Nazaire Raid. The deception bought precious minutes as German signal stations demanded identification. Campbelltown's radio operators sent back authentic German responses, claiming they were friendly vessels returning from patrol with battle damage. Captain Mecca suspected something wrong when RAF bombers dropped single bombs instead of full loads over St. Nazaire. He ordered gun crews to stay alert. At 0120, searchlights blazed across the water. German operators challenged the approaching ships again. The masquerade was ending. At 0128, German coastal batteries opened fire. Tracer rounds streaked through darkness as Campbelltown's crew lowered the German ensign and raised the white battle flag of the Royal Navy. The old destroyer surged forward at maximum speed while shells exploded around her. 2 helmsmen fell dead or wounded. Lieutenant Commander Beatty gripped the wheel personally and aimed for the dock gates. 0134. Impact. Campbelltown slammed into the massive caisson gates at 19 knots, her bow driving 33 feet into the structure. The ship shuddered to a halt with her forecastle hanging over the entrance to the Normandy dry dock. 4.5 tons of hidden explosives sat perfectly positioned to cause maximum damage. Beatty calmly announced to his crew, "Well, here we are." 4 minutes late. Commandos swarmed over Campbelltown's sides under withering German fire. Captain Roy and Lieutenant John Roderick led assault teams against gun emplacements, while Lieutenant Stuart Chant's demolition group raced for the main pump house. They breached the building and destroyed the machinery that controlled water levels in the dry dock. Other teams attacked the northern pump house and the south winding house. Within minutes, they accomplished their primary objectives. The motor launches faced hell approaching their landing zones. German 20mm cannons ripped through mahogany hulls and fuel tanks. Launch after launch burst into flames or sank in the Loire. Only a handful reached shore to disembark their commandos. The rest fought desperate gun battles while trying to evacuate survivors. Motor launch. 306 dueled with German torpedo boat Jaguar 45 miles from St. Nazaire. Sergeant Thomas Durant manned a Lewis machine gun completely exposed on deck. German shells tore into his position repeatedly. Durant bled from multiple wounds, but kept firing until enemy rounds finally killed him. The German captain, who captured ML-306, personally recommended Durant for the Victoria Cross, calling his courage extraordinary, even by enemy standards. Lieutenant Colonel Newman found himself leading commandos through St. Nazaire's streets in what became known as the St. Nazaire steeplechase. They fought house-to-house combat, scrambling over rooftops and through gardens while German reinforcements poured into the battle. 5 commandos eventually reached Spain and made it home to Gibraltar. The rest faced capture or death as ammunition ran low. Dawn brought German celebration. Campbelltown sat wedged in the dock gates like a trophy. Senior German officers and French dock workers climbed aboard to examine the strange British destroyer. They found nothing suspicious in their search. The explosives remained perfectly hidden behind steel and concrete casings. Noon approached March 28th. 40 German officers and civilians stood on Campbelltown's deck discussing the failed British raid. The pencil fuses had been timed for 0430, but acid distillation caused delay. At 12:05, the bow erupted in a massive explosion visible from miles away. The blast killed the inspection party instantly and sent a wall of water roaring through the dry dock. The 160-ton caisson gate disintegrated. Campbelltown's forward section vaporized, while her stern section washed into the ruined dock. Total German casualties exceeded 360 dead, including the 40 dignitaries on Campbelltown. French civilians also died when panicked German troops opened fire after the explosion. That evening, 2 delayed action torpedoes fired during the initial attack detonated near the submarine pens, triggering more panic and German friendly fire incidents that killed additional French residents. British losses were staggering. 169 men killed out of 611 who sailed from Falmouth. 105 Royal Navy personnel and 64 commandos died. 215 became prisoners of war with nearly half wounded. 228 returned to Britain. Only 5 of 18 motor launches survived the gauntlet. The raid earned 89 decorations, including 5 Victoria Crosses, more than any other single operation in British military history. Lieutenant Commander Beatty, Lieutenant Colonel Newman, Commander Ryder, Sergeant Durant, and an able seaman William Savage received Britain's highest honor for valor. Hitler's rage was immediate and absolute. He dismissed General Karl Hilpert, von Rundstedt's chief of staff, for allowing British ships to penetrate so far up the Loire. The Führer accelerated Atlantic Wall construction, demanding 15,000 new bunkers by May 1943. Special attention focused on port defenses to prevent another St. Nazaire. The battle for escape became a nightmare of fire and blood. German reinforcements flooded into St. Nazaire from surrounding garrisons. The 703rd, 705th, and 809th Naval Flak battalions turned every gun toward the harbor. Motor launches burned like torches on the Loire while survivors clung to wreckage or swam toward shore through oil slicks and tracer fire. Motor gun boat 314 fought a running battle with 5 German torpedo boats from the 5th Torpedo Boat Flotilla. Commander Robert Ryder directed the evacuation from his bridge while German shells bracketed his position. Only 5 motor launches reached the rendezvous point with the escort destroyers. 13 wooden boats and their crews vanished in the Loire estuary that night. The commandos trapped ashore faced impossible odds. Lieutenant Colonel Newman rallied his men for breakout attempts through St. Nazaire's narrow streets. They moved in small groups, using captured German weapons and ammunition salvaged from dead defenders. Some tried, reaching the Spanish border 400 miles away through occupied France. Others attempted to steal boats from the harbor. Captain Donald Roy led his Scots-wearing regimental kilts into final combat near the Old Town Bridge. German Schmeisser submachine guns cut down 3 men before Roy himself fell with bullets in both legs. The survivors dragged him into a bombed church, where they made their last stand until ammunition ran out. Roy spent 3 years in German prison camps, but survived the war. Sergeant Alfred Searson and 4 commandos actually reached the Spanish frontier after 18 days evading German patrols. They stole bicycles, posed as French workers, and slept in barns while walking 200 miles through Vichy territory. Spanish border guards arrested them, but British diplomats in Madrid secured their release. They reached Gibraltar on April 20th and sailed home to England on a Royal Navy cruiser. The strategic impact was exactly what Churchill hoped. Tirpitz never left Norwegian waters to threaten Atlantic convoys. Without St. Nazaire's dry dock available for repairs, German Naval Command couldn't risk their last super battleship in open ocean combat. Admiral Erich Raeder told Hitler that Atlantic surface operations were now too dangerous without guaranteed repair facilities. The Royal Air Force finally destroyed Tirpitz in her Norwegian fjord on November 12, 1944, during Operation Catechism. German investigations revealed the full scope of British intelligence preparation. The raiders carried detailed plans of every building, gun position, and machinery installation in the harbor. These plans came from secret intelligence service agents who had photographed the facility before the war, and French resistance members who worked in the docks. One resistance leader, Jean-Baptiste Delalande, was tortured and executed after Germans found British maps in his possession. Organization Taut immediately began emergency repairs on the Normandy dry dock using forced laborers from across occupied Europe. Polish engineers, French technicians, and Russian prisoners worked under SS Guard trying to rebuild the shattered facility. But the damage was too extensive. The caisson gate weighed 160 tons when intact. Campbelltown's explosion had reduced it to twisted metal fragments scattered across 200 meters of dock floor. The pump houses proved equally irreparable. British demolition teams had destroyed not just the machinery, but the foundations and electrical systems. German engineers calculated that complete reconstruction would take 2 years and require materials desperately needed elsewhere on the Atlantic Wall. Hitler ordered the project abandoned in August 1942. The Normandy dry dock remained unusable until 1948, 6 years after Campbelltown's explosion. German engineers tried desperately to repair the facility, but the damage was too extensive. The massive caisson gate lay in pieces at the bottom of the dock, along with Campbelltown's shattered bow section. Harbor cranes couldn't lift the wreckage, and pumping systems were destroyed beyond repair. French civilians paid a terrible price for the raid's success. After Campbelltown's explosion, panicked German troops opened fire on dock workers they suspected of collaboration. 16 civilians died immediately, and 30 more were wounded. German authorities arrested 1,500 residents and interned them at Savenay Camp 50 kilometers away. Most of their houses were demolished, even though they had nothing to do with the British operation. The German torpedo boat Jaguar, that dueled with motor launch 306, became a symbol of the night's carnage. Her captain, Korvettenkapitän Karl Donitz Schmidt, filed the official report recommending Victoria Cross for Sergeant Durrant. Schmidt wrote that he had never seen such courage from an enemy soldier. Jaguar herself was sunk 6 months later by British destroyers off the Channel Islands. St. Nazaire became one of 38 battle honors awarded to British commandos after the war. The survivors formed the St. Nazaire Society, still active as a registered charity in the United Kingdom. A memorial in Falmouth Harbor bears the inscription, Operation Chariot. From this harbor, 622 sailors and commandos set sail for the successful raid on St. Nazaire, 28 March 1942. 168 were killed. 5 Victoria Crosses were awarded. The operation proved that Britain could still strike back when the war seemed darkest. In military circles, it became known as the greatest raid of all. Lord Mountbatten later wrote that St. Nazaire showed how properly conceived combined operations could influence overall military success. The raid cost Hitler his Atlantic port strategy and trapped his most powerful warship exactly where Britain wanted her. Intelligence reports from German archives captured after the war revealed Hitler's personal fury over the raid. He screamed at Admiral Raeder during a conference at the Wolf's Lair, demanding to know how British ships had penetrated so far inland undetected. The Fuhrer ordered immediate construction of additional gun batteries at every major port and doubled the garrison strength at submarine bases. The 22nd Naval Flak Brigade received new orders to coordinate with coastal artillery rather than operating independently. Captain Mecca was promoted to major and given command of harbor defenses at Cherbourg. His experience at St. Nazaire shaped German defensive doctrine for the rest of the war. British propaganda made maximum use of the raid's success. BBC broadcasts to occupied Europe emphasized that Nazi Germany was not invulnerable. Resistance movements across France received new recruitment after St. Nazaire proved that Allied forces could strike deep into Fortress Europe. German morale reports from 1942 show increased concern about British raiding capabilities. The technical lessons learned at St. Nazaire influenced every subsequent British amphibious operation. Combined operations developed new landing craft designs based on motor launch performance under fire. Commando training emphasized urban combat skills after street fighting proved crucial for escape and evasion. Demolition techniques were refined to ensure complete destruction of strategic targets. American military observers studied the raid intensively while planning their own special operations. The Office of Strategic Services adopted British commando training methods and explosive techniques. Rangers trained at British Combined Operations schools learned demolition skills first tested at St. Nazaire. The German 6th and 7th U-boat flotillas based at St. Nazaire felt the raid's impact immediately. Captain Lieutenant Georg Wilhelm Schultz, commanding the 6th Flotilla, and Korvettenkapitän Herbert Solar of the 7th had to relocate submarine operations while harbor repairs continued. 14 U-boats were trapped in port during the attack. Unable to sortie against Atlantic convoys for 6 weeks, while debris was cleared from harbor approaches. Vice Admiral Karl Donitz had inspected the submarine base just 1 day before the British attack. He asked Solar what preparations existed against commando raids. Solar replied that such an attack would be hazardous and highly improbable. The next morning, Solar watched British commandos blow up facilities 50 meters from his headquarters bunker. The raid's timing proved devastating for German submarine warfare. March 1942 marked peak U-boat effectiveness in American waters during Operation Drumbeat. German submarines sank 132 ships totaling 581,000 tons along the United States coast that month. St. Nazaire's disruption forced submarine crews to operate from Lorient and Brest, adding 800 nautical miles to each patrol and reducing time on station by 4 days. Lieutenant Nigel Tibbets, the 28-year-old explosives expert who designed Campbelltown's delayed detonation system, survived German captivity and returned to Britain in 1945. He revealed that the explosive charge contained not just depth charges, but additional composition C plastic explosive smuggled aboard in false bulkheads. The total explosive weight exceeded 6 tons, making it the largest delayed action bomb ever successfully delivered to target. The pencil fuses used 8 different acid concentrations to ensure detonation regardless of temperature variations or mechanical damage. Tibbets calculated that German inspection tours typically occurred between 10 and 12 hours after successful enemy attacks. Based on intelligence reports from other raids, he timed the explosion specifically to catch the maximum number of German officers during their victory celebration. Motor Launch 307, commanded by Lieutenant Thomas Boyd, carried the raid's most dangerous cargo beyond explosives. 12 Royal Marine commandos aboard her vessel were tasked with capturing German naval codes and cipher machines from the harbor master's office. They succeeded in reaching the building and photographed code books before German reinforcements forced them to withdraw. These photographs provided British codebreakers with updated Enigma settings that enhanced Atlantic convoy protection for 6 months. The German torpedo boat Jaguar that engaged Motor Launch 306 was actually the former Norwegian destroyer Sleipner, captured during Germany's invasion of Norway in April 1940. Her crew included Norwegian sailors pressed into German service who deliberately aimed poorly during the engagement. Norwegian resistance member Eric Lindahl later testified that 3 sailors aboard Jaguar secretly helped British survivors by providing medical supplies and fresh water before German officers discovered their activities. French dock workers played crucial but largely unrecognized roles during the battle. Crane operator Jean-Baptiste Moreau used his heavy equipment to block German reinforcements from reaching the Normandy dock by positioning massive concrete blocks across access roads. He was shot by German sentries while attempting to disable additional harbor machinery. His actions delayed German response by 40 minutes, allowing commandos to complete their demolitions. The organization taught repair assessment revealed catastrophic damage beyond the obvious caisson destruction. Campbelltown's explosion had cracked the dock's foundation concrete to depths of 4 meters. Seawater infiltration contaminated the electrical systems throughout the facility. The dock's massive pumping system required complete replacement, including 8 centrifugal pumps each weighing 12 tons. German engineers estimated reconstruction would consume enough concrete and steel to build fortifications for 50 Atlantic wall gun positions. Hitler's personal architect, Albert Speer, visited St. Nazaire in May 1942 to assess repair possibilities. His report to the Führer recommended abandoning the Normandy dock entirely and converting the harbor into a submarine assembly facility using prefabricated sections transported by rail from German shipyards. Speer calculated this alternative would provide greater strategic value while requiring fewer critical materials. The British Commando Medical Team, led by Captain David Peyton of the Royal Army Medical Corps, established an aid station in St. Nazaire's railway goods shed during the height of battle. Peyton treated wounded German prisoners alongside British casualties, following Geneva Convention protocols despite the chaos surrounding them. German medical officer Oberarzt Heinrich Müller later wrote that Peyton's professionalism under fire exemplified military medical ethics. Both doctors survived the war and corresponded until Peyton's death in 1978. German interrogators discovered that British commandos carried detailed photographs of every German defender's family members living in St. Nazaire. These photographs came from French resistance surveillance conducted over 18 months before the raid. The psychological warfare implications terrified German security services, who realized that British intelligence could target German personnel anywhere in occupied Europe. This discovery accelerated development of the Sicherheitsdienst counterintelligence programs. The 5 Victoria Crosses awarded for St. Nazaire represented different aspects of exceptional courage under fire. Commander Robert Ryder earned his decoration for leading the naval force through impossible odds while maintaining tactical control. Lieutenant Commander Stephen Beatty received recognition for ramming Campbelltown precisely into target, despite taking heavy casualties on his bridge. Lieutenant Colonel Augustus Newman's award recognized his leadership of commandos fighting through St. Nazaire's streets after the evacuation plan collapsed. Sergeant Thomas Durrant's posthumous Victoria Cross came with unique circumstances. The German captain, who captured Motor Launch 306, personally wrote the recommendation, describing Durrant's courage as extraordinary even by the standards of brave enemies. Able seaman William Savage earned his posthumous award for manning exposed guns on motor gun boat 314 while under concentrated fire from multiple German positions. His sacrifice allowed other crew members to complete their missions. The German 5th Torpedo Boat Flotilla lost 2 vessels during the engagement with surviving British motor launches. Torpedo Boat. Condor struck a mine laid by Motor Torpedo Boat 74 while pursuing the British evacuation fleet. Torpedo Boat Falk suffered engineering failure after taking hits from British 20mm cannons and had to be scuttled near Belle Isle. These losses represented significant German naval assets that couldn't be easily replaced. St. Nazaire's civilian population endured months of German reprisals after the raid. Wehrmacht authorities imposed martial law that lasted until September 1942. French residents required special permits to move between city districts. German troops conducted house-to-house searches for evidence of collaboration with British forces. Over 200 civilians were deported to labor camps in Germany based on suspicious activities that usually meant nothing more than watching the battle from their windows. The raid's success encouraged similar British operations throughout 1942. The Bruneval raid in February had captured German radar equipment. St. Nazaire proved that major installations could be destroyed by small forces using surprise and exceptional courage. The Dieppe raid in August attempted to apply these lessons on a larger scale, but resulted in disaster when German defenses were fully prepared. British intelligence analysis revealed that St. Nazaire fundamentally changed German defensive thinking about their Atlantic ports. Before the raid, German commanders viewed commando attacks as minor nuisances that might damage individual facilities. After St. Nazaire, they understood that small British forces could cripple strategic installations and alter the entire course of naval warfare. This realization forced Germany to divert substantial resources from offensive operations to defensive preparations. The technological legacy of Operation Chariot influenced naval warfare development throughout the war. British designers created improved motor launches with better armor protection and more reliable engines based on lessons learned during the Loire engagement. German naval architects developed new coastal defense concepts that emphasized multiple overlapping gun positions rather than individual strong points. But one detail remained hidden for decades. In 1994, French marine archaeologists exploring the Loire estuary discovered something extraordinary embedded in the harbor bottom. Pieces of Campbelltown's bow section contained fragments of the original pencil fuses, still intact after 52 years underwater. Chemical analysis revealed that the acid delay mechanism worked exactly as designed, proving that British demolition experts calculated the timing perfectly for maximum German casualties during the inspection visit. The old destroyer had become a precision weapon that struck 12 hours after impact with devastating accuracy.